I have a treat for you today. Back for the third time, we have Tuomas Rounakari. Now, Tuomas is a musician, composer, ethnomusicologist, and a PhD student, and he joins me on Imperfect Action to discuss befriending uncertainty. Now, the first time he was on the podcast, we discussed joy and inspiration. The second time he was on the show, we talked about grieving and the parts of modern life that block our own connection to ourselves. And this time, it's uncertainty. As always, both philosophical and practical, the focus is not just on uncertainty, but on making friends with it, which is such a different approach, not just living with it, but getting comfortable and welcoming it. We talk about the danger of knowing, of how by accepting what we don't know, in other words, accepting that there isn't certainty in the world, it allows us to be productive and to stay focused on what brings us joy and inspiration. And then we go into getting quiet and seeking inspiration by actively not doing, which, by the way, doesn't come easy for a lot of us. And so to help out with that, Tuomas leads a 10-minute or so exercise to really get into how do you actively not do? How do you listen to the stillness? And it really takes us about 10 minutes or so to settle into the discussion. But from that point on, it really gets going and we go deep and we also go practical, which is one of the things that I really appreciate about our conversations. Now, his episodes in the past are both in the top 10. In fact, one of them is the number one most downloaded episode on Imperfect Action. I think you're going to love this one as well, and I'm very, very excited to be able to share it with you. Welcome to Imperfect Action. This is, of course, Brock Edwards. And today I have a returning guest. I have Tuomas Rounakari, and he was actually a guest back in episode 40, and we talked about aligning with inspiration, living an authentic life with impact, joy. And then on episode 71, we talked about wisdom traditions and really looking at, grieving, looking at the lament or the cry song and some myths of the modern age that were really blocking us from connecting and being authentic, connecting to ourselves. And both of those have been popular episodes. In fact, the Wisdom Traditions episode is the most downloaded episode on Imperfect Action, and the other one is currently 9th. And so anyway, I'm excited about this conversation. We have some uncertain times here. So Tuomas, can you just introduce yourself briefly, and then we'll go from there?
Well, here I am again, and very happy to be here. And thanks for inviting me back once more. And I'm a musician, as most of you already know, and ethnomusicologist. Have been working a lot with indigenous communities, mainly in the Arctic areas, and that has gained some perspective on my own worldview and changed a lot of things, how I address things. Shamanism has become quite a big part of my own personal life, and my first solo album as a violinist was called Shaman Violin, and somehow people have started calling me a shaman violinist after that album, even though it was meant to be just an album a name for the album, not my name. But, things like this happen in the world.
So let me ask, Tuomas, what is ethnomusicology?
Ethnomusicology studies, there's a broad answer that is that there's musicology, which studies music in a very traditional Western concepts. So a musicologist usually studies Beethoven symphonies or the music's relationship to those times of those great composers and so on, or just technical things within the music, the structure and harmony and such things. Whereas ethnomusicologists tend to study anything else in music. So some ethnomusicologists, they study music in computer games, film music. And a big part of ethnomusicology is linked to anthropology and ethnographic work, working with here in Finland. We work a lot with our own tradition and our own folk music and traditional music and study those things. But also ethnomusicology studies a lot of world cultures and other traditions than one's own tradition, and have a dialogue with those cultures. So, but its focus is always on music. So maybe that's an adequate answer for this purpose.
Sure. And then, so you mentioned shamanism, and so I don't know exactly what that is. Could you just describe a little bit what shamanism is?
Well, that's a lovely thing to say, because I think it would be very dangerous to start to say that we know what it is. There are so many ways to look at it, but certainly shamanism is something very universal and something that the shamans are an essential part of indigenous cultures, and shamans have also been somehow present in the past of many other cultures. Like here in Finland, for example, if we go back in history to the times of hunter-gathering societies in the soil of Finland, shamanism was there too. So shaman is often considered as an intermediator between the worlds of the spirit world and the physical world, and they were often healers. In a way, you could say that a shaman in the past times combined several occupations. They could be entertainers in the sense that they knew a lot of mythical songs. They were usually very gifted in some art form that held knowledge of the tradition within those arts, and they were often healers. Could be very practical healing. Well, healing, of course, always is practical, but now I'm meaning I mean like knowledge of herbs and the use of herbs, or knowledge of muscles and physical structure and how to manipulate those kind of things. And they were all, of course, they had religious authority. They were people who were often asked questions and asked for help in matters that concerned the non-physical realms of life. Gosh, what a long answer. Well, it's not easy. It's not easy to define these things, because like usually, like if we start to talk about God here now, most of the listeners think that they know what we are talking about. But at the end of the day, my experience of God is definitely something else than someone else's experience of God. And we are never sure that we are going to talk about the same thing at all. So hence my skepticism with this.
Well, so ethnomusicology, shamanism, but what most people probably know you for, those who know you, is, you mentioned you're a musician. You play in a folk metal band, Korpiklaani. And
yes,
one of the things that, we're going through right now is a time of uncertainty. And, this is being recorded in mid-April. Coronavirus is rampant throughout the world. The world is dealing with uncertainty. Now, the world's always dealing with uncertainty. This just happens to be the uncertainty of the moment, and it's a big one. I don't want to minimize that at all. And in fact, for many people, a lot of my friends are speakers or consultants, and all within about a day of each other, they all reported their business for the year had gone away, just evaporated. Everyone canceled on them. I assume, being a musician, that happened with you as well.
Yes, yes, it certainly did, and probably even before than with consults, because our business is to play to large crowds. So the first events that got cancelled were mainly concerts and large public events, and most likely they will be the last ones to return to.
So that's a lot of uncertainty right there. And
absolutely.
So I mean, everyone deals with things differently, and everyone's situation is different. But how are you doing? How have you been dealing with this time off that you weren't expecting to have?
Well, I'm doing fantastic.
Well, that's good to hear. Tell us more.
I mean, I'm really having a good time at the moment. I'm really savoring this as a big opportunity, and I'm very thankful for a lot of things that are unfolding and have happened. Some of them are very personal, and some of them are more global and more about societies. Just briefly about society here in Finland, we've followed the rest of the world in politics, so that our language towards each other inside politics and political opinions have gone more harsh. The political correctness has gone to the trash bin, just like almost everywhere else, and within recent years, there's been the talk has been more uglier and uglier, and I think you could definitely relate to this in US. And now, thanks to this, all this is gone here. Like I don't remember a time in my life that I would have witnessed in Finland all of the political parties actually putting people first and collaborating, and really truly collaborating and appreciating one another and showing that to the public. So I think that's quite beautiful, and I hope it stays that way. So that's one of the beautiful things I'm witnessing here in Finland happening. Also, communities, now that we are restricted and in isolation, so much beautiful things have happened. How just in my own neighborhood, we can still walk outside here. This is not a densely populated area, so we can easily have the social distancing and still go out for a walk. So people are putting teddy bears onto the windows so that the kids in the neighborhood have more things to do outside. And also it's kind of a way to show that, we are all here. We are doing something here together. So those just the first things that came to my mind about witnessing some beauty here. You're still there?
I am. Good. Yeah. So what have you learned? What have you learned about yourself during this time?
Well, that's a good question, and also I think it's something that is good to ask a musician right now, because all of us who are freelancers, no matter where we work at, we come to terms with uncertainty by the nature of our work. Like, there are no long contracts, there are no permanent jobs. So uncertainty is something that is very common in my own life, and uncertainty is something that has become a friend in my own life. It's not a problem. It's not a stress factor. It's something that is always there, and something that I've learned to appreciate. I've learned to have it as an accompany. And the thing is that in a Buddhist traditions, they say that it takes 10 years of practice to become comfortable with I don't know. And I can testify that in my own life, that it's not easy to be comfortable with not knowing. But there's a great value when you finally reach that place where you actually become a friend with I don't know. And the biggest gift that I feel in it is that whenever we say that I know, we've defined the world. We've defined our place in the world. We've defined it, and then we stick to it. And we need some other evidence to come to stop us and interfere with it before we stop and analyze and rethink things about, is this still useful? Is my definition of what I know, is it still useful? And surprisingly often, when we really know about something, it becomes outdated very quickly. It might be effective, it might be the best possible solution for some time, but often it's not the best possible solution for a very long time. So when you really are open to this, I don't know. When you say I don't know, you are actually accessing beyond definition. You're going beyond. You stop defining things. You stop putting them into a box, and you open up to something that you don't see, something that you don't know, but something that somehow you can sense that is there. We all know that our perceptions are limited. We all know that our knowledge is limited. So when we just relax into that knowing of not knowing, we actually open up to new possibilities, and we start to listen more than talk. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, you've touched on a little bit of my next question for you there. That the listening piece and being open to not knowing. But that is the uncertainty is a driver of fear. It's a driver of panic at the extremes. We typically, people try to deal with uncertainty by minimizing it, by finding a source of control in their world. So what were you able to do that allowed you to make friends with uncertainty? You mentioned that your job as a musician is always uncertain, and some would go to the extreme of trying to minimize that and how I guess they organize their life, or just being anxious all the time. But
there definitely are musicians that are anxious all the time.
So how did you come to just be able to, and I love the wording, it became a friend, not just something you deal with all the time, but, a source of comfort almost.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, first of all, you have to test these things. You have to go through that uncomfortable threshold and see what happens. And you have to do it several times before not knowing and uncertainty comes a friend to you. But just going to my past, in financial terms, it was pretty common to me 10 years ago that I knew about 2 or 3 weeks to the future about my work. So, of course, there were some gigs here and there that were within a month or two, but those don't really add up to making a living. So if you are in this kind of situation that often the freelancers are, you can approach that situation in a way that, okay, I know that my money is going to run out after 2 weeks. I know at this moment that my income, I know what I have, and I know my income, I know the minimum expenses that I have to be paying. So I know that I will be broke at that day within 2 weeks or 10 days or whatever. So that's certainly a stressful situation if you approach it like that. And the bad news is that if you get emotionally involved with this idea, you get attached to it too. And at that moment that you have an attachment to this story that within 2 weeks you're going to end up broke, you will actually start seeing the world a little bit differently. You start to see the world through your own anxiety. And that's not very appealing. And also, it's not, at that kind of a state of mind, you are not open to the unknown. You're not open to the possibilities that might be there waiting for you. So when I was in these situations before repeatedly, I just learned a practice of accepting that I don't know. I don't know that what will happen in 2 weeks, no matter how I count the money I have, the expenses and what's coming in, it's not that it's definitely going to be so. There's no way of me of knowing how many people are thinking of me and wanting to dial my number, but just haven't called quite yet. And also another thing is that if you worry and worry and worry, you lose your activity, you lose your productivity, you lose the joy once again. So to me, allowing this uncertainty to just be, help me to be productive, help me to focus on the things that I love about in what I do, keep on doing those regardless of any known reward anywhere, and just keep on doing these things from the joy and passion that I have for those things. And somehow it just magically always worked out. And I think one of the ways to explain this magic is that when you are aligned with your own inspiration, you are aligned with the things that you really are here to do, you are also, with your mind, you are open for opportunities. You are open for suggestions that you might not see otherwise. You are open for things that would be hidden if you would be just worrying. So this, experiencing this over and over again, that okay, this feels absurd, that I don't react to this with stress. This is not what most people are doing, and it feels absurd, but I'll do it anyway. And then pausing repeatedly and look back and say, well, it worked out. It worked out again. It worked out again. So this sort of starts to build out trust that actually I'm not crazy. And that the world actually collaborates with you in that way, that if I put worry and anxiety in, I will see it come back to me. But if I just stay focused on what gives me joy, what gives me inspiration, and what has my alignment to myself covered, it somehow just works out.
I used to work with a guy whose parents had a small recording studio in Detroit, and obviously lived with some uncertainty there. And his advice was always to enjoy it when it's busy, enjoy it when it's slow.
Exactly. And that's also another thing, like, if this doesn't work out, maybe maybe you need a break. And as absurd as it might be feeling to just laying low at that kind of moment and not, do nothing for a while, maybe that's exactly what you ought to do. And that would actually tie into the COVID situation and my own life this spring. If you want, I can share about what happened with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
So on turn of February and March, we were in Japan playing, and those were almost the last gigs we played this year. And we played for 600 people in Tokyo on Sunday, and we played another gig in Osaka on Saturday. And on Sunday, after the Tokyo gig, on the news in Japan was that the government asked people to not go to any events anymore. They had already canceled big events like the sumo wrestling championships were canceled already, and all the major events with over 1,000 people participating. And we went to Japan with mixed feelings. It's quite a strange feeling to step into a plane, not knowing if you have a flight back, not knowing if you end up to play those gigs or not. So it was just a kind of leap of faith to go, and I'm happy we did get to play those shows, but it was right literally in the last shows that were played in Japan. Coming back home, we played 2 shows in Finland the next week, and I started to have some symptoms. I had some low fever and some feelings in my lungs. I wasn't tested because I had only very mild symptoms. So they weren't testing people with only low symptoms at that time over here. So they didn't take me in. So I might have had the COVID, and I hope I did, because if I did, and this goes worse over here, then I'd be safe to help people. But who knows? But anyways, I had some symptoms, and then came the news that our UK tour was cancelled. And, to me, it was simply a relief. It was like, I don't want to be traveling in these conditions. I don't want to be out there when we don't really have the necessary experience or info of what's going on in the whole world. And, what are the risks that there are for myself, and what are the risks that I bring to other people if I just carry on. So these questions made it just a relief for me that the UK tour was cancelled. And within a week, everything was cancelled on March, April, May. And that did hit me, of course. But what was really funny is that since November, I've really struggled with my calendar for this year. I've really I haven't found the usual alignment that I have with my work. All the dates and fixing events and fixing tours, it all felt wrong. And I didn't get it, because there were really interesting opportunities, really wonderful gigs, but it just, I just felt displaced. I didn't feel the alignment. And to me, this is alarming. For me, this is always a message that I should stop. I should take time off. I should go within and listen and double check if I'm on a right path with my life. So I was already feeling this since November. And the stress of this feel of misalignment was there increasingly. And then all of them got cancelled. So, somehow intuitively, I knew that none of those shows will happen. I knew that it's a waste of time to be planning those shows. I didn't know, but something in me knew by telling me, by giving me this discomfort of the feeling that this plan is not aligned with what I'm supposed to do. Isn't that something?
Definitely. So did you discover what you're supposed to do during this time?
Well, I believe I did. And what happened next was that my symptoms continued about 3 weeks. They were mild, but they were enough to sort of like feeling kind of low with every idea of working,
Mm.
you know? And and to me, it was a clear sign that unplug from everywhere. Don't listen to anybody. Just unplug. Say no to everything, and just stay and listen. Just stay and listen. Listen for where the alignment is. Because if you're not feeling the flow, if you're not feeling the alignment, um, it's no use to trying to figure it out in your head. It's no use to sort of like um, start thinking what worked before, or what helped you in some other situation, or figuring it out. If I do the same thing I've always been doing, but a little bit differently, maybe that's where the flow is. It's all nonsense, because you can just simply stop and stay patiently and listen. Go out to the woods, go out to the nature, find the balance within, and listen. And after a couple of weeks of just listening, and a couple of weeks not doing anything and just listening is quite a long time. It takes quite a lot of patience to just return to listening. And I just had an idea. I have an old computer at my house that I haven't opened in 10 years. And there's a hard drive there that's full of music that was recorded by a trio that didn't perform that much, but I really loved those guys, and playing with this trio was blissful. But for some reason, nothing happened with that trio. We played maybe 2 gigs or something within 2 years, so it wasn't going anywhere. But what we created together was really meaningful. And I've kept that computer there because I know that our rehearsal tapes are there. And I know that at some point I want to go back to that hard drive and listen them all through. And so I had that. I had a moment of inspiration that, yes, I want to do that. And I did nothing. Because I wasn't sure if that was just an idea from my head, or was that really coming from a deep inside. So I did nothing. I kept listening. And the second day, it still felt inspiring. And the third day, I just couldn't help myself. I just had to follow that inspiration and do it. And I listened about 6 hours of rehearsal tapes on that hard drive. And it was so purifying, because I realized that there was things that were really, really better in my own life, really better in my own playing, really better in my own expression 10 years ago. There are things that are better now. There are, of course, development and expansion and a lot of good things that I can do now better than 10 years ago. But listening to those tapes, I connected with something that I had left behind, and something that has been haunting back there. Sort of like, look here, here's something in your own creativity that you're not breathing in fully. And at that point, inspiration just returned. And I'm at the point now. I'm so excited and waiting a new recording gear to show up from Germany. I've ordered it already, and I've done a throughout update on the working environment I have at home. And there was a big question to me that maybe the procrastination that was a big part of my life at home is because the working environment wasn't to my liking at all at home. I accused a lot of traveling and just the need of recovering from all the travel dates, but maybe that wasn't it. Maybe I just simply didn't have the tools that inspire me. And now I've ordered those tools and updating the whole system, and I'm just super excited. And I know that all of this will change my habits of working in home. And the important lesson in this story is that it's no use to go directly to where I am now. It's no use to sort of like just jump in and say that, hey, this sucks. I'll go and buy a ton of new toys and then I'll be happy. This doesn't work. We all know it doesn't work. But if you stay in silence, if you just listen and just patiently wait for the alignment and then start to act, then you are actually back with the inspiration. You are back with the guidance. You are back with full alignment and authenticity and doing what you are supposed to do. And it feels great. And it doesn't let you down.
So from your experience, Tuomas, where is that line, or how do you know when it's shifting over from being still and patient and listening and just not doing anything, like just procrastination?
Well, I think we don't generally recognize that not doing anything consciously is tedious work. So, escaping to watch the full season of Vikings on Netflix or whatever, that's not actively doing nothing. So when you are actually actively doing nothing, it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of focus. And it's also that kind of work that you can't do to the day's end. You got to go and watch that Vikings or whatever series. You got to take a break. You got to take rest from doing nothing also. Isn't that something?
A bit of a paradox there.
Yeah, it is. But the thing is that the kind of listening to your intuition, it's consciously training. It's consciously, it takes a lot of energy. It looks like it looks to the outside that you are doing nothing, but actually you are turning your guts around. You are rebuilding yourself from the inside out, and it's a lot of work. And along that work, there's probably some ghosts that will pop up. Some fears from your past, some failures from the past, some things and memories that block you. These things start to show up when you're just silently there and just witness them, just allow them to come, say yes to them. Because oftentimes we tend to go away from anything that's uncomfortable. That's what we talked with the lament too, that when you consciously go into grief, when you choose to say yes to grief and experience the grief fully, you're not the same person after you've done it. and that's a big internal work that happens there. A lot of shifts happen, and the ripple effect of that is not for us to be known. We can't do it sort of like, when I do this, I know that then I will be like that. It doesn't work like that. You really have to just be with the unknown, and listen to the unknown in order to reach that place and say yes to all those uncomfortable things. And by doing this, you know you are working. You are doing something very valuable. And so this is one part of listening and feeling where the alignment is. And to me, a big technique in this is really not to answer these things from your mind, but just silently listen by asking the questions, really asking the questions. One big question to ask is that, how am I? Not who am I? How am I? How am I in relation to the who am I? And just sitting with that question, not trying to answer it, it immediately brings feelings. How am I? And when you sit with those feelings, slowly things start to come up in your conscious mind.
A lot of paradox here, and you started to explain it because I was wondering, and I'm sure it's different for everyone, but the active not doing, and just how one makes that leap. And so you started to answer it right there with just the questions that you're asking yourself and being able to sit with those questions. Some of us don't sit still well. So I was wondering, is this something you do through journaling? Is it in a dark room? Do you go for a walk in the woods? Is it all of them? How do you approach it?
All of that. I do all of that. Actually, if you want, we can do a practice that helps exactly that a little bit.
Yeah.
So breathing is a big part of these things, and there are tons of magnificent breathing exercises there available. So I really encourage people to study their own breathing and go online and find different breathing techniques and try them out, because there's a lot to be discovered there. But this exercise that came to my mind came from your word posture. How do you stand with these things? And oh yeah, this is actually an exercise that can go rather far if we want to.
Well, walk us through so that someone listening would be able to.
Yeah. So just sit up comfortably, and this time I think it's good to sit up, and just feel your back. And while you're breathing in, just naturally, effortlessly breathing in and out. While you're breathing in, be conscious of your back, and be conscious how your back spine is holding you upwards. There are a lot of muscles there, little muscles that are comfortable working and keeping you in a good posture. You might want to move a little bit, or rock and sway and find that comfortable balance place to be. And just feel that your back is strong. And when you breathe out, feel how your front is soft. So you're breathing in with a strong back and breathing out with a soft front. Chest is soft, the belly is soft. And now you are combining two things, strength and gentleness. Breathing in, strong back. Feeling how energy goes up your spine. And exhaling, feeling how it goes down your chest and stomach. So it's uplifting with strength and letting go with softness and ease and gentleness. And now you will quickly feel a balance. And this is something very natural for us, that our back would be strong and our front would be soft. Sometimes in situations we turn this around so that we confront things. And when we confront things, we start to we start to use our muscles, and in front we are not loose and relaxed in our front, but we lose that strength from our backs. But when you're naturally aligned with your own strength, your back is strong and your front is soft. And what I love to do with this is feeling the ground, that I'm really aware of my foot soles and feeling the ground, how my foot soles are touching the ground. And when I inhale, I can inhale from the ground up. And when I exhale back to the ground. So I become part of circulation here. With an inhale, energy comes up from the ground, up the spine, around my skull, and down the chest, the tummy, legs, and back to the ground. And when you feel this grounded place and a balanced place within yourself, that's the place where you can start asking these questions. How am I? And sometimes the body gives you a hint. It shows something uncomfortable going on somewhere. And that's a place where you have to give attention and affection. So to greet that with affection. Acknowledge it's there and breathe into that. And with this exercise, you can also, because there's so much uncertainty and also death involved now in the global experience under the COVID, you can even breathe in life and breathe out death. You can play with that image a little bit. Breathe in life force and breathe out death. And then reverse it after a while, so that you breathe in death and breathe out life. Millions and millions of cells are dying in your body every day, and millions of cells are given birth inside of your body every day. So when you inhale death, you give attention and energy to that which wants to die, which is naturally dying already inside of you. And by breathing in death and exhaling life, you actually start to make friends with death. Death isn't scary. It's a natural part of you. Natural part of the life cycle. And just staying there, just staying in these places in multiple ways and multiple times. You can practice being in balance, being in guidance, and being supported, no matter what's going on. So how's that for you?
That's good. That's good.
So these are really simple things, and simple ways of actively doing nothing. And actually, I think it's dishonest if I'd say that this is doing nothing. The doing nothing comes in between. You know, the actual, because this is very actively doing nothing. But when we stop these exercises and just go walk, have a walk in outside or lay down in a couch, not taking the cell phone, not going online right away. Maybe we listen to some music or something that if that helps. But when we go into that relaxed space where we are really not doing anything, that's when these exercises actually start to work within us, when we don't pay attention to them. And when we come back to them, they give us more and more answers. And one big thing for the question you asked, like, how do you know that it's time to keep on listening and when you know that you are aligned, is that a lot of times our ideas come from our environment. They're not our own ideas. They come from the environment. They are somebody else's ideas. And sometimes it feels great to play along to those ideas. And sometimes at least for me, it happened many times that I get enthused about someone else's idea. I start acting upon it. And after a day or two, I'm like, what am I doing? Why did I say yes to this? Honestly, I'm not that into this at all. So that's one place where ideas and inspiration comes outside of us, and sometimes we get confused. Sometimes we feel other people's inspiration as our own inspiration, which it's not. And sometimes our ideas are just memories repeating themselves, memories of experiences that that we think that because world has been like this, it will be like it in the future as well, and memories repeating, sort of like we act upon a memory because it feels comfortable, because we know it. We know how it goes when we act like this, and it's comfortable. Even though we don't like it, it's somehow weirdly comfortable. But then there's real inspiration, and real inspiration comes from nothing. It comes from no thing, from the unknown. And when an idea comes to you, and you recognize that there's something in this idea that I haven't been planning on, that's a good start. That's a good place to sort of like feel out that okay, I've been introduced with something that is new, something that is not coming from the past ideas. And just to sit with those ideas for some time and let them sink in, they either start to generate energy inside of you in a way that you have a gut feeling that you really want to do this. Like with my computer story, in a third day, I just did it because it would have feel unnatural not to do it. So when you find the flow, there is no questions anymore. But the more difficult question is that there's always a threshold that you have to go over. And sometimes that threshold is it's there for different reasons, and you never know. You just have to go over it to find out what happens after.
You know, I've been hearing a lot of talk. I assume we all have just the idea that, you know, if you have downtime now is the time to do all those things that you've been planning on doing all your life. You know, writing the great novel, learning a new language, solving world's problems, those sorts of things. But it strikes me that I haven't heard anyone really saying, hey, everyone, now would be a really good time to sit down, reflect, think about, you know, create some space to just think.
Yeah.
And, you know, it seems like we tend to default to action versus taking this pause. And so I appreciate your description of how to do it, of kind of priming the brain through breathing and sitting in quiet before even getting to asking the question.
Exactly.
And then doing it in an iterative process, not expecting an immediate answer, but just priming the brain.
Exactly.
And coming back to it.
Yeah. See, sometimes you do get answers very quickly, but there's always a risk that you are answering from your default setting of your brains. You are answering from things that you already know. And if that's the place where you go to the I know mode, there's a great risk that you are actually not listening anymore. So that's the thing, you know, not to assume answers right away, and not to even necessarily want them right away. Savor them, savor the listening, because it can be a very beautiful place to be. And I really think, you know, I really hope that we don't go back to normal. And by saying this, I do hope that we go over this. I do hope that a lot of things will come back to us. I do hope that this is not definite, you know, situation that we stay for forever, of course. But going back to normal, I hope that we don't go back to that normal that was normal before this.
Well, and I was actually going to ask you about that a little bit because you had mentioned you've already seen change, and I suspect many people have seen, and we're talking about paradox and irony a little bit, that through this forced separation, it seems like people are connecting more and deeper and going beyond small talk and really getting into how you are and supporting each other. And it feels like communities are even tighter. And there is so much that, the normal was just kind of where we were, where we evolved to over time. And it's rare that we get a chance to step back and go, okay, which pieces do I want of that and which pieces do I want different? So
Exactly. And that's exactly what I would ask everyone who's been laid off now to think, um, if you really miss your job, you can still think what was working in your job, and what do you want to change when you go back? How do you want to be different when you go back to your work? And maybe some of you don't want to go back to the same job at all. And what a golden opportunity this is to really be laid off, because no one is offering you a plan B. No one is offering you the same thing that you've been always doing in a new form. No one's going to do it right now. So now is really the time to ask these questions and feel it out. How could things be different when I do return, when the activity level does return?
those are good questions. And I think that ties nicely with, we're talking about living with uncertainty and just being able to accept that, yes, there is uncertainty, and that may not necessarily be a bad thing. And especially in this moment where we may have a time to reflect more, or at least the world may be telling us this is a really good moment for us to pause and reflect.
Yeah. At least it does offer that opportunity to most of us at the time being.
So I almost hate to shift gears here to something a little bit lighter
Mm-hmm.
along those lines, but still probably relevant to many people. One of the things is I, like many parts of the world, are now doing video meetings and those sorts of things, and you really get a look into your peers, your coworkers, your counterparts lives. And I see a lot of people where they're now working from home and they never plan to. Like, if you're set up to work
Yeah.
from home, that's one thing. If you're suddenly working from home, and I see people with them and their spouse and their kids and their dog and their cat all around the dining
Mm-hmm.
room table trying to get anything done. And one of the things that has not come up in this conversation much, or the people who weren't familiar with you otherwise may not be aware, that is, I mean, you are in a rock band. You
Mm.
travel the world. You're packed into buses and planes and living on top of, the rest of the band and anyone traveling with you, the technical support and all that, for extended periods of time. And so I don't know if it relates directly, but what is your advice for just getting along in tight quarters when you have to, when there isn't a choice?
Well, the most important thing for me in managing my day in a tour bus is to acknowledge and appreciate that all of us are very different. That I have my needs and I have my borders that need to be respected. And I have to let other people know about them very honestly. I shouldn't assume that they know. And on the other hand, I have to respect and learn the other people's boundaries and borders and respect them. Because when you are in this situation that you are locked down together, that's not the time when when I would suggest you to solve all your conflicts, or sort of kind of find. So it's more like finding the common ground where you are comfortable with each other, and finding the ways how you can support each other, but also letting others around you know what are the things that you need, what are the things that you how could they help you, and how can you help them. And this doesn't have to be difficult. I think especially with us, with Korpiklaani, we have a really good group of people that are very different from each other. We have very different habits on the road, and we are just really an odd bunch of people. Like I know some other bands that, when they travel, they go together to see the same attractions in the city, and they have the schedule that everybody participates, and they like to participate, do the same things, because they are close to each other with what they like and how they are and how they behave. But we are not. We are definitely not. And that is the most beautiful thing of our odd group, that we can actually be in those tour buses and just live with each other and respect each other as we are, without this kind of demand for someone to be just like me, or have the same boundaries and same needs as I do. So that's definitely something that helps a lot, to be very clear about these kind of things. And it's not often easy to honestly voice out your own boundaries. And boundaries doesn't have to be like stone walls that you can't see through. A boundary can be like a garden wall, like some fence made out of bushes that is only a 1 knee high. Everybody knows that there's a border. Everybody knows there's a line, but you can see it through. So you don't have to fight for your borders, but they have to be somehow visible and clear and easy to acknowledge. And that helps a lot. Ask something else.
Well, within that, and maybe you've already answered this, but that I expect, what I would envision is, you have creative types together, you have egos together, you have just the strain of travel together. So being clear on borders and boundaries, and asking for grace and receiving grace, all goes a long way. What about when there is actual conflict? When pressures do build, is there a way that you found to deal with it, if not easily, at least appropriately? Because these are all relationships that need to continue. This isn't like, when you go to work and you have coworkers and then you go home in the evening. This is you're with each other. More like the family is with each other, even when they're very different people. So I guess from your experience, what have been some of the best ways to resolve those conflicts when they do spill over?
Well, I don't have an easy answer to that, but all in all, I think that whenever there's a conflict, there's something is becoming visible in conflict situations. Something that has been hidden before is coming visible. So oftentimes the conflicts situations sort of escalate in a way that energy is only building up. People are getting more and more agitated, and the arguments are getting uglier and uglier, and the whole conversation goes astray from the original fact that sometimes doesn't get voiced out at all. That that thing, that issue that is becoming visible because of the conflict. And so the quicker you can sort of caught yourself from that emotional space that, okay, I've been triggered. Because, if you are angry and yelling to someone, you've been triggered. Your system has been triggered, right? So it's already happened. So the sooner you acknowledge it, that, okay, I've been triggered, I'm not thinking clearly anymore. I'm only just reacting. To withdraw, to just simply withdraw and start asking about what is it that we actually want to be talking about. Because none of you want to be mean to each other. None of you want, we've all been countless times to those situations when we say things and 20 minutes later, well, I didn't mean to, right? That's how what happens in a conflict. We start to say things that we don't mean to. So once you become aware that you've been triggered, once you are aware that, okay, I'm just reacting to words here, then you gain control of yourself back, and you can start asking, like, what is it that we really want to talk about? And if you can get there, the conflicts can be very fruitful and are very fruitful. But also sometimes when everybody's emotional and agitated, the only thing that is possible to do is to live those emotions through, to just wait for that emotional wave to go through. Like often when we are triggered in our subconscious mind, something triggers, some kind of a reaction comes up. When we are already reacting, we've lost the game for some time already. We kind of have to play that tape to the end before we can stop it. And so sometimes we just have to outlive those emotional things and then get back to them when we are back in our senses about what is it that we really need to discuss about. And this last phase, coming back to them, it's a little bit like with kids, like when your children has a rage attack, that's not the time to talk senses to them, right? So in a similar ways, we adults, we aren't that different. We also need the time for our emotions to roll over us and go through us before we can actually address what really happened.
Well, that's good advice. I mean, we have covered, so we've been talking for a little over an hour now, Tuomas, and we have covered a lot of ground around, uncertainty and really looking to how do we get kind of square in ourselves? How can we get quiet and listen to that intuition? What I thought was kind of a light question about getting along in tight quarters is actually fairly profound in, this is what we're dealing with, and yet it connects back to that uncertainty, because uncertainty promotes tension. And so this may be a good place to kind of wrap up the conversation. But before we do, I want to ask you, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to make sure that we covered, or that would fit in well with what we've been talking about?
Well, I kind of want to tell a little story about my own son now that the homeschooling is happening, because just as an example of the many blessings that this situation can offer us. And as a person who travels about 100, and I have about 150 travel days a year, and of course that amount of traveling affects my family, and this long stay at home has really helped me to reconnect with my son in a new way, and I can see things being healed. But one of the big things was the homeschooling. And I think not many of us spend our time with our kids so that we do something with our kids. And then we move on to do something else with our kids. And then we move on to the next things that we again do together with our kids. Like quite often nowadays, people do something with their kids, and then that time is sort of spent, and now I can escape to my own things, right? So, so I wonder how common it is that families spend time with like this, that they do one thing together and move on to do another thing together, another thing together, another thing together. And for me, that's been such a big moment, big thing to happen, and big experience to have. And the connection I have with my son out of this, like, and these can be really small things, like helping him out with maths for 20 minutes, and after that, cooking something together, and after that, playing a little bit PlayStation together with him. Anything. It doesn't have to be like big tasks that we do. It could be 10 minutes of one thing and then moving to another thing. But this sort of continuation of several tasks done together really deepened our connection. And one of the things that was really funny between me and him was that he always wanted to defeat me. He always had to be better than me. So he never took advice from me. But now, thanks to homeschooling, he's had to. And it just changed effortlessly. It's just like within a couple of days, it's like the most natural thing ever for him to ask advice from me. And how beautiful is that? What a blessing. And to me, I really don't want to go back to the time when school handles the education and home is home. I think it would be absolutely wonderful to have these homeschooling days become somehow, intertwined to the schooling system, that us as parents could be more I don't know what's the word, infiltrated or more intricately in the schooling system too. So this is just to point us somewhere lighter, some beauty that clearly is available here in these difficult situations, and just acknowledging that there are so many layers in this world, so many possibilities in this world, and we never know them all. And how good is that we don't?
I love that. That's also something I have not heard or seen put out there as we're thinking about, what do we do with our time during this period, is just building on those relationships, the relationships that we have. I mean, I mentioned, I think some people are doing that community-wise and checking in with people, across town, across the world. But, those people that we're with the most, the family, the friends, and using that as an opportunity to not just have the relationship exist, but take it someplace else.
Yes.
Go better with it. And so, anyway, I love that thought. We're talking about really learning about ourselves a bit deeper, and now we're talking about learning about those around us a bit deeper, which we should probably be doing all the time anyway. But there is kind of that unseen opportunity here and now. So,
and also what's so beautiful now is the appreciation that we are showing to those people that mostly go unseen in everyday life. So that is so beautiful, and something that I really hope that we don't lose that that we'll keep on with that, keep on appreciating those unseen people more and more in our daily lives.
Well, beautiful thoughts. Tuomas, this has been fabulous. I've, as always, really enjoyed this conversation. And yeah, just but the combination of the deep philosophy with the practicality has been great.
Thank you. Well, we have a good thing in these podcasts, third time, and there's something special here. It's always a good moment when we talk.
Absolutely. Well, I feel like I do have to switch back into kind of the podcast thing. And so where can people find you if they do want to learn more about you and find out what you're up to?
Well, my website is going well nowadays. So there's rounakari.com, rounakari.com. So that's definitely the best place to learn more about me, and also there's the Facebook page also that at times I'm quite active. So welcome over there, and signing up to the email list on the rounakari.com website is also highly recommended.
Well, excellent. Well, Tuomas, thank you so much.
Thank you. Been a pleasure.